Hey, what is going on with y'all, man? It is Black Balloon, and I'm coming back with another video. So y'all already know what's going on. Alright, y'all. Now, in this video, we got a very interesting topic, as you can tell by the title. Some of y'all may not be familiar with the guy on the screen. Some of you may. This is Ted Gunderson. And, widely considered to be like one of the first, if you want to call them whistleblowers or conspiracy theorists. He was a high profile FBI investigator. I don't think he had any major cases tied to his name. Maybe the one that he had when he became a private investigator, some wild murder case with a guy, I think his last name is McDonald. But that's not why we're here. He has a lot of videos where, he goes in on pretty much everything. And this was back in the 80s and the 90s, so this was like original information. This wasn't social media era. It wasn't at a time where it was very popular to have these kind of guys. This was like the Bill Cooper area back then, where it was just certain people who were really exposing the shadow government, the occult, trafficking, especially with the little ones, and that is kind of what this video is going to be tied to. I got a good clip that we're going to listen to him talk about a few things, and something that is very important for us to read that I myself have never heard of, but it ties back to the whole trafficking thing and somewhat of where all of this stuff, started. Or just in a sense how far it goes back and how long it's been going on, like right under our nose. I thought this would be a really good video. Some of his interviews started being recommended to my channel, and once I started listening, I immediately knew we had to do a video on it because it's very interesting what I found and what he mentions in this interview. So with that being said, y'all, we'll go ahead and jump into the clip. Then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about a few more things, all right? Check this out.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know if you know it or not. Some of you do, some of you don't. Former head of the FBI, Los Angeles, California, retired in 1979, March. And shortly after my retirement, I was asked to investigate the Jeffrey McDonald case as a private investigator. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and two children in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, February 17th, 1970.
Holy shit, y'all. Check this out. Now, this is a discovery I had no idea we would stumble upon. You heard what he just said, right? He said he was working the Jeffrey R. McDonald case. This is Jeffrey R. McDonald. We're talking about Ted Gunderson. I don't know when this interview was done. It had to be like in the 80s or 90s. I think it was in mid-90s. We're talking about over 20-something years ago. What he is talking about may have just bust this whole thing wide open. So he was assigned to this like high-profile case, Jeffrey R. McDonald, who supposedly murdered his pregnant wife and two daughters. I have to jump in right now to get this out real quick before we continue listening, because this is so important. And I myself just realized it once all of this stuff came out with the New Orleans thing, right? Supposedly he got affidavits from Helena Stokely confessing to her involvement in the murders, which she did to be a part of a satanic cult. At the time they were like calling it a black cult or whatever, right? So turns out that Jeffrey R. McDonald, who was a medical doctor in the Army, a physician in the Army, turns out he was at Fort Bragg as well. And we get Fort Bragg in these rituals with the guy who did the attack on Bourbon Street and the Cybertruck guy. Y'all, we're talking about an interview, from the 1990s, and he was out of Fort Bragg. And the belief is that the murders were done by a satanic cult that a woman actually confessed to doing. But of course, they ended up finding McDonald guilty of it anyway, said that it was baseless, all this other stuff. Why? Because the military was involved. This was higher up. These were rituals. So, when it goes out, it has to play that they want it to play. It's already been planned, and that's, someone's going to take the fall for it. But y'all, oh my God, I cannot believe it. Now we understand why there is a link between the two current events today with Fort Bragg military base and special operations. This right here, I feel like just busted wide open. We already had an instance back in the 80s where a satanic murder took place of a pregnant wife and his 2 daughters. So we're talking about a lady who was pregnant that had, if the baby had a heartbeat, we're talking about 4 people who were murdered. And we're talking about children here. And it was done by a satanic cult. So we already know their goal, their sacrifice. And they got these innocent souls. I don't even know if anyone has made this discovery on the internet completely as of now. But wow, look, we'll go ahead and get back into the clip, as this will be a very interesting video. We got a lot more to go. So y'all, check this out.
The long story, I put in about 2,000 hours on the case. When the case first began, my investigation first began, I told Dr. McDonald that I would investigate the matter for him. He had just been convicted and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I think I'm going to sneeze. I didn't make it. Okay. 3 consecutive life sentences. I told him if I found out that he was guilty, I would no longer be on the case. I would drop my investigation. Much to my surprise, from the evidence that I read, information that I developed over a period of several years, I've established beyond any question of a doubt that this man is absolutely innocent. And on October 25, 1980, I obtained a signed confession from Helena Stokely, the girl in the floppy hat, if you know the case. By the way, there was a best-selling book, Fatal Vision, and a movie out on this. And the girl in the floppy hat said that Dr. McDonald did not commit those crimes. They were committed by my satanic cult group. And it was my initiation into the cult that night. And she gave me detailed information about the movement within the house that night, who did what. And I said to her, Helena, how do I know you're telling me the truth? And so one of the questions I asked her, the whole series of questions I asked her, and this is on audio video, in some instances a video, but always on audio. She said, I said, Helena, tell me about describe the jewelry box on the dresser in the master bedroom. And she described it right to a T. And just to make sure, I went down to Sears Roebuck and got a catalog and brought it back. And I said, Helena, pick out the jewelry box in this catalog that was on the dresser. She picked out the jewelry box. It matched. Also, she told me that she attempted to ride a rocking horse in the child's bedroom that night, but she couldn't ride it because the spring was broken. The only way she could have known that spring was broken was to have been there the night of the murders, February 17, 1970. So anyway, I submitted a 1,200-plus page report, actually 1,100-plus page, almost 1,200 pages, in March of 1981 to the FBI, Judge Webster, with a personal letter. He was director of the FBI. And I said, Judge, I believe this man is innocent, and he'd run out of money, and, I've continued to work it as I usually do. And I think that the FBI should continue along the lines of my investigation. By the way, it also went to the FBI and to the U.S. Department of Justice, the Solicitor General's office. And much to my surprise, my witnesses, my 19 new witnesses, including Helena Stokely, started calling me and saying, hey, Ted, the FBI has interviewed me. They're trying to get me to recant. And I'm saying to myself, that isn't the responsibility of the FBI. The FBI is supposed to gather information, not destroy it. And that was my first clue that we had a serious problem in that case. And then I continued on, and I had a number of other cases that I handled privately. And in each instance, I noticed evidence was lost, destroyed, stolen. I noticed that there were strong indications of corruption. So I asked myself, now what's going on here? And over the years, I started gathering material until about 2 years ago. Up until about 2 years ago, I kept saying there's a loose-knit network operating in this country involving drugs, pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption, et cetera, et cetera. 2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. And you know how the news media comes after us when we use the word C, conspiracy, that C word. Well, they can come after me all they like, because I guarantee you right here and now, we do have a conspiracy, and I'm going to prove it to you here today. Now, one of the things that convinced me and really got me started in this regard, by the way, this conspiracy involves pornography, drugs, corruption, involves pedophilia, involves organized child kidnapping rings, the Finders out of Washington, D.C., CIA cover, covert operation involved in the international trafficking of children, terrorism, bank accounts, and it goes on and on. By the way, I strongly urge you to go to my booth after this lecture and get my research, my book and my research on missing children. We're going to go into that a little bit in the lecture. But my missing children lecture documents that the Finders, an organization in Washington, D.C., the CIA front.
All right, y'all. Now we come to the part of the video where we are going to talk about the Finders, who Ted Gunderson called a CIA front. And they are involved in some pretty wicked and satanic stuff, especially involving trafficking as well with the little ones. Now, before we get into this article, I have to say it is absolutely insane that this video connected back to recent events with Fort Bragg. We now understand what comes out of Fort Bragg. You know, military operations, could be MK Ultra as well, rituals, and it's been going on since the 70s. But it is crazy to make that connection, right? Now, this article about the Finders, this is actually a real article, so this is not, a conspiracy. This is from the Washington Post. This article is 37 years old, February 7th, 1987. I subscribe to the Washington Post for like $1 or $2 a week. Anyone could do the same. For me, it comes in handy for research purposes, right? Because I love, just having news or clips when things happen, so you can get like as close to the original story as possible, right? So we're reading an article from 1987. So it says, authorities investigating the alleged abuse of 6 children found with 2 men in Tallahassee, Florida Park discovered materials yesterday in the Washington area that they say points to a 1960s style commune called the Finders, described in a court document as a cult that allegedly conducted brainwashing and used children in rituals. D.C. police, who searched a Northeast Washington warehouse linked to the group, removed large plastic bags filled with color slides, photograph, and photographic contact sheets. Some photos visible through a bag carried from the warehouse at 1307 4th Street Northeast were wallet-sized pictures of children, similar to school photos, and some were of naked little ones. D.C. police sources said some of the items seized yesterday showed pictures of children engaged in what appeared to be cult rituals. Officials of the U.S. Customs Service, called in to aid in the investigation, said that the materials seized yesterday include photos showing little ones involved in bloodletting ceremonies of animals and one photograph of a child in chains. Customs officials said they were looking into whether a child pornography operation was being conducted. According to court documents, computers and software seized from the warehouse, from a Glover Park apartment building, and from a van that was recovered in Tallahassee along with the children. Yesterday's disclosures about the mysterious group grew out of an investigation that was set in motion by Wednesday by an anonymous call to Tallahassee police about two well-dressed men who were supervising 6 disheveled children in a neighborhood park. The men were arrested and charged with child abuse. Their links to the D.C. area have led authorities into a far-reaching investigation that includes the Finders, a group of about 40 people that court documents allege is led by a man named Finders Pt1 in their various homes, including the deluxe apartment building in Glover Park, the Northeast Washington warehouse, and a 90-acre farm in rural Madison County, Virginia. Tallahassee police, who arrested and charged men identified as Douglas E. Ammerman and Michael Houlihan with child abuse, contacted D.C. police Thursday in an attempt to establish the identities of the little ones. They learned that D.C. police had heard of the Finders group. No other member of the group had been located last night. According to U.S. District Court records in Washington, a confidential police source had previously told authorities that the Finders were a cult that conducted brainwashing techniques at the warehouse and the Glover Park duplex. This source told of being recruited by the Finders with promises of financial reward and sexual gratification, and of being invited by one member to explore Satanism. According to the affidavit, the source told authorities that these little ones were used in rituals by the members. And though the source had never witnessed abuse of the little ones, the source said the little ones' grandparents feared for their safety. On December 15th, a D.C. police detective observed clearing in the rear of the 3900 block of W Street Northwest, where several round stones had been gathered near a circle, as well as evidence that people had gathered there. According to the document, which stated that this practice is sometimes used in satanic rituals, armed with that information and a report from Tallahassee police of the alleged abused children, police sought search warrants. Meanwhile, authorities in Florida attempted to learn more about the 6 small children, described by a police spokesman as hungry and pretty pathetic. These children were unkempt, hungry, disturbed, and agitated. They had been living in the rear of a van for some time. 5 of the children were uncommunicative, according to police, and none seemed to recognize objects such as typewriters and staplers. However, the oldest was able to give investigators some information. She said that 2 men were the teachers. She was not sure where they had been recently or where they were going, but until recently, they had been living in the district in a house with other children and adults. Now, this does not come as a surprise to me, but I'm always excited to learn new things and, read about stuff that, I myself have never heard about. For me, it's just always been like a kick, it's just always been, I don't know, I almost get like adrenaline, like when I hear some stuff I've never heard or I come across certain information. For me, it's exciting. It's exciting to learn about, and it's exciting to spread the information, because we know that these type of cult groups, these type of finder groups, I mean, just think of the name, the Finders. Like, they're literally finding little ones and doing what they're doing, and this connected back to the CIA in Washington, D.C. I mean, we already know that's White House. If mostly stuff like this is going on in that area, it's connected to something. And Ted Gunderson is the first person I heard talk about the Finders and it being a CIA front for trafficking. So I don't, I'm not surprised, because we still know today that upwards of 800,000 to 1 million kids go missing. I think one kid is reported missing every 90 seconds. So in the time that you've been watching this video, that's already a bunch of kids who go missing. We're talking about one kid. This is a stat you can look up. One kid every 90 seconds, y'all. So obviously that stat is not, missing and never found again, but, you get the point. All of them do not come back home. The ones that do, we are thankful for. I thought another interesting stat, Amber Alerts. I think, if I'm not mistaken, since the 1990s, Amber Alerts have only been responsible for about 1,500 kids, brought back home and found. Now, I'm not sure how far Amber Alerts spread across the country, if they're in every state or not. I didn't particularly look that information up, but that is pretty shocking to me. We're talking about since the 1990s. I'm not sure if it's all the way till, 2024, 2025, but recently this might have been a couple weeks ago. They've only found and brought back home 1,500 kids in over 30 years. To me, that's a lot of red flags. You know, like, I'm thinking of it in a sense of like this Finders cult and the stuff that's been going on for so long, and how we know like people are strategically placed in certain areas, or, you know, at schools or teachers or universities. And, you know, it would also make sense for the Amber Alert, you know, to be a Finders cult as well. You never know today, because we all know the devil wants the kids, y'all. And I just couldn't believe it when I read it. I was like, damn, I'm thinking Amber Alert at least returning 10,000 kids since the 1990s. It said like 1,500. I don't even think it was quite 1,500. You're welcome to correct me on that. But I'm just flowing this off the top of my head right now. But yeah, you know, so once again, y'all, I'm not surprised. And, you know, it'll be my mission for sure, you know, along with a bunch of other stuff as well, to continue to expose this kind of stuff. I'll definitely, like, you know, try and look up any more information or articles or things that were investigated about the Finders cult, and see if we could do like a part 2 to this video. So yeah, y'all, I know this, you know, this video is not too long, but I felt it was very powerful, especially with the connection that we made to Fort Bragg and the recent events that happened in New Orleans and Las Vegas with the Cybertruck explosion. And yeah, man, so y'all let me know what y'all think about this video. If y'all want to do a part 2, like I said, see if I can dig up some more information. And yeah, man, it's Black Balloon, and I'm gonna see y'all soon. I'm out.